All right, family, welcome back to the Live Younger Longer. This is a show where I explore the science, the mindset, and the strategies to help you defy age, unlock your potential, and live your best years right now. Today, we're going to be diving into something that's often overlooked in the world of wellness and biohacking: marriage. In an age that celebrates independence, self focus, and what if one of the most powerful longevity hacks isn't a supplement, a device, or a new technology, but it's built on a loving, strong partnership? Research shows that married people live longer, experience lower stress, enjoy better health, even build more wealth over time. But it's just not the ring, it's the relationship. It's the shared mission, it's that emotional connection. And in the days of accountability, where that you can literally rewire biology and you can add quality years to your life. So whether you're married, you're single, or somewhere in between, this episode gives you a new perspective of the real power of connection and how love, when done right, can be one of the greatest health and wealth multipliers of all. So I'm your host, Jason Harris, and today we're uncovering how marriage isn't just good for the soul, it's good for your longevity, your vitality, and your bottom line. So let's dive into it. And I'm excited about this episode because I'm someone that's coming from a place of experience. My wife and I, we started dating at 15. We got married at 20. And so we're next year about to celebrate our 30th year, right? 30 years. It's hard to believe. I've been with my wife more than half my life. And I can tell you how often that we get into these places to where, man, going through the years and having that partnership, that covenant that we share, it's been so powerful over the years to be able to always have that constant in our life. So no matter whether we're going through good times, bad times, somewhere in between, to always have that. And over the years, we have proven a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. But I think marriage sometimes is very overlooked when it comes to your longevity, when it comes to your overall life satisfaction, when it comes to your wealth. Right. There's so many aspects to this that we're going to be getting into, but I want to go back all the way from the beginning. So if you go to back, again, I teach and preach a lot out of the Bible. I think it's one of the most amazing, not only business books, but life books there is. And I am a believer. I've given my life to Christ back April 10th of 2000 and have been living that life ever since. And when you go back to the beginning and think about how we were created, right? God literally formed man from the dust of the earth, right? We're we're without form, we're lifeless. He formed us from the dust, and then he literally got here, right? Breath to breath, nostril to nostril, and breathed life into man, right? I mean, can you experience that or really think about that? How amazing that is. When Adam first opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was his heavenly Father, right? They were there, they were connected. He breathed life into man. And then he said, it's not good for man to be alone. So he put Adam in a deep sleep. He took out one of his ribs and formed woman. And they were formed in this marriage covenant. Now, what's interesting when we go through it, if you think about a couple things that were before the fall of man, right? Before sin entered the picture with that dastardly little serpent, right? That came in and deceived Eve. What happens is the marriage covenant was before the fall. The relationship between man and woman was before the fall, right? It was created in this perfect environment, in this blessed environment. Have you ever really contemplated and thought about that in that aspect to where like we were formed in that marriage covenant was was there before the fall? I think there was three things that he gave man before the fall, and I got to give credit to Joby Martin, a preacher of mine that I listen to quite often, and he's been running through this series, so it's kind of fresh on my mind. But he talks about how the willingness to obey, that's a form of worship, right? The willingness to obey and that wanting, that was before the fall, right? He said a lot of thou shalts, right? God only said one thou shalt not, right? Don't eat from that tree of good and evil. But everything else was thou shalt. Like it was full of everything you can do. I don't understand why people think God's a God of rules, because everything before the fall was what you can do, the things you can enjoy. My personal favorite, be fruitful and multiply. I think you know what that means. But going through a lot of these things, right? And so it gave him the willingness to obey, the enjoyment of work. As men, we should enjoy our work. You should find something that you find fulfillment in and that you enjoy. but also that covenant of marriage, that relationship between man and woman. Those three things were before the fall. So when you really think about how blessed and how this was set up in this perfect, sinless garden, right? We should take note of that from the beginning of man. This was set up. And again, it's kind of been preached for years and decades now, whether you want to go back to to kind of the feminist movement or whatever, where it was almost trying to break these families apart, right? Where you don't need two parents in a household. You don't need to worry about marriage. If it, if it feels good, do it mentality, right? Just go around and sleep with as many people as you can. And it doesn't matter if you're in a committed relationship. And we see that more and more prevalent in this world. I think about a lot of the stuff I see on social media these days, and it reminds me of a proverb that says, just like a gold ring and a pig snout is a woman of no discretion. Right. Think about that proverb. And if you look at social media and all the stuff that's out there, everybody just flaunting everything in their face. And then most people, after a date or two, right, they're already going into that covenant piece, which sex should be for marriage. It was created for marriage, for recreation and procreation within the confines of marriage. But nowadays, people people are sleeping around so often, so they almost enter a relationship with shame in it, with sin in it. Right? You shouldn't be bragging about your freaking body counts. That's not something that you should be proud of, right? Like, I'm proud of the fact that my wife and I don't have those numbers, right? Like, and if you look at it from the context as the fulfillment, if you look at it just in the sex life, man, this isn't what I was going to talk about, but we're just riffing here. So going into the confines of marriage, I can guarantee you people in a committed relationship that they put all of that sexual energy toward their partner that they're committed to, they have a covenant with, that they're married to. I guarantee they have so much more fuller sex life than those people that are sleeping around. And I think you know what I'm talking about if you've been one of those people, that it's shallow, it's empty, there's no real fulfillment in it. You're not getting any long lasting out of it. And I think that's where, some of the major roadblocks in relationships right now, if you look at one major one that's so pervasive, is porn, right? People, they waste all of that blessing that God gave us, that though all that energy, all that sexual energy and desire, people waste it on some inanimate thing that will never satisfy them, instead of giving that to their spouse, where they're going to have such a much longer and more fulfilled sexual experience and satisfaction, because now you're giving all of that to your partner and your partner's receiving and giving that all of that to you. And then, and I'll guarantee this, I guarantee that people in committed relationships, their sex life is so much better because you know each other. You know your likes, your dislikes, you know everything that goes on with that, right? Instead of getting into these areas with these strangers that you have no idea, right? You're just, okay, well, I guess this 90 seconds of dynamite's going to be awesome. No, like, you're having this fun with these people that you're committed to. And that's just one piece of the longevity of and the health aspect of what we get out of committed relationships. So I don't know why I went down that road, but maybe somebody needs to hear that, because I can stand here and testify, right? Before I got saved, I was a typical guy just like anybody else. And I remember being a young guy and looking at magazines and being like, I didn't even know what I was looking at half the time, right? But it was just these avenues, and again, in today's world where things like porn are so accessible everywhere. Right. Back in my day, I'm 49. So me growing up, it was a lot of magazines, right? Or then the VHS tapes came out. So yeah, I'm dating myself, but you know, I went down that road and I got very convicted by God one day after I had gotten saved, because I realized that all of that energy should be directed toward my wife. She's my wife. She's the woman of my desires. She should be the one that gets all of that energy from me. All of that should be directed to her, not to some inanimate person or some person I'll never meet or whatever's going on out there. It should be directed toward her. And ever since then, we have had the most fulfilling physical relationships because all of that were shared in that commonality where all of my desire goes to her, all of her comes to me. And still, after 30 years of marriage, we're chasing each other around like teenagers, right? Like it's an amazing experience. And again, there's so many great health aspects to that now. I want you to really think about how many diseases would not ever be even a thing if everyone waited till they got married and they stayed committed to that relationship. I mean, I really want you to think about that. The Bible even warns that a lot of the sins of the flesh, they have major consequences. But yet we discount all of that. We don't think about that. But we don't think about also how it can be such a great benefit for us, because I guarantee if you're in this committed relationship, the the love, the security, the trust, the desire, all of these things, knowing somebody always has your back and you have theirs, and no matter what kind of hell on this earth you may be going through, that you have that constant. I saw that with my parents. As a kid growing up, my parents were married a long time before they passed away. And I remember knowing that no matter what, mom and dad were always going to be there. There was always a safe place. There was always a place of love and security. Now, I did a lot of stuff bad myself, right? Growing up, like I was a typical crazy ass teenager that did a lot of stupid things, right? And if it wasn't for God's grace in the midst of my stupidity, I guarantee there's multiple times I should have either been probably dead or in jail. But thank goodness there was some grace on my life, I guess. I don't know. But knowing that even if I disappointed them, even if I angered them, there was always that constant. And so kids growing up in these relationships, knowing that mom and dad were there. And we told our boys, we have 3 boys, and I told them all the time growing up, you will not divide us. Like we are one. We are connected. Like there is no division between us. You can try to manipulate situations all you want, but mom and I are of one accord, right? And so getting into that, and I did get some statistics because I did want to share some actual real world stuff. But when it talks about longevity and health, married people lend to live longer, right? Most of the time, married couples live a longer life, and it's not just a longer life, but it's a life more fulfilled with more satisfaction in it, right? Like these are just straight statistics. I remember reading one, it says study of older adults um, compared to never married. They literally have they have lower risk of all cause mortality. There was a study of over 600,000 people in Asian cohorts that found that being unmarried was associated with higher risk of all cause in all specific mortality, and effect was especially pronounced or more especially pronounced among young men and those younger than 65. It also found that a study that among patients with heart failure, being unmarried versus married associated with higher hazard of all cause death, right? And so there's multiple studies out there that just on a longevity and a health side, that being in a loving, committed relationship is so much more fulfilling. And if you look at society, you can see it. Look at the people that have the most satisfaction in their life, that live a life of or feel they live a life of significance. I think we all know people, whether they're famous or rich or whatever you want to say, that they can buy anything that they want, but they're still unfulfilled. They still don't have that deep rooted satisfaction. If nothing else, I could always look back and be like, man, the last 30 years, I have lived a good life. I've lived a life of significance. I have raised 3 young men that now are forming and charting their own path in this crazy world, right? And because I always looked at, I was raising men to be men and not ashamed of being a man, right? Because men and women can't be more different, not only biologically thinking, but physiologically, everything in us, we are different. And so in today's world, when people are acting like everyone is exactly the same from biology on, we cannot be more different. right? Look at any little boy and any little girl. Any little boy is going to create anything and make it into a gun. Any little girl is going to make it into a fairy wand, right? Or a magic wand, right? It just can't be more different how we are. And we need to embrace, because God did not make a mistake. And that covenant of marriage is such a major, major thing. So when we get into even the health and wealth aspect of what we are, it's shown that married people end up creating more wealth. And now there are multiple talk about if both parents are working, of course, having two incomes. But for a lot of years, my wife and I was the one doing the work, and I enjoyed my work, right? Like I talked about in the minute, you should find work to enjoy. But it was a great joy of my wife, and it was a goal of ours for her to be able to be at home with the boys. Now, her and I growing up, we grew up in two very different households. Again, we started dating at 15, so we know each other, right? And her mom had a couple relationships that did not go well, and she worked. She was a hairdresser, so she worked out of the home a lot. My mom stayed at home, my dad worked, and so we saw that contrast of that just home life. And let's be honest, if we ever wanted to get away with something, we went to her house. Why? Because no one was there. But we saw that contrast, and we figured we're going to do whatever it takes to where one of us can be home, to where somebody can be that constant that can be a part of it. Now, there is give and takes to that, because there was a lot of years when my boys were very young, and we had one of our businesses that was taking and consuming a lot of my time. Yeah, I missed out on a lot, right? I sacrificed time because I was trying to create a good environment, right? I wanted to provide, which I did. But I also got to a point where I not only wanted to be a good provider, I wanted to be a present dad, because a dad in the household is so important. And we've seen that throughout. You look at any statistic out there, right? If boys are growing up in single family homes, we know that the chances of getting into drugs, getting into trouble with the law, all these things, they're a much higher risk. And I shared this on a reel, but sociologist professors thought they had all figured it out. They said, okay, here's if you do these 5 things, you have a 99% chance of not being in poverty. 99%. Right. And so it talked about getting at least a high school diploma, right? Moving out, getting a job, getting married, and having kids. Right. Those 5 things, you do those 5 things, you have a 95% chance of not being in poverty. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty good odds. But we all know the statistics for single parent households. And I know there's sometimes circumstances where that's inevitable. Things happen. And I know people are doing the very best they can. But the covenant of marriage is such an amazing piece of our health, our longevity, and our wealth. And so I think and I hope that there's this resurgence of people wanting to find that relationship, wanting to have babies, right? That's such an amazing thing. So I think babies give life. I've been on mission trips all over the world, and one of them in particular, we have a big water well ministry down in Mexico. And the guy that runs it, late in life, his wife died. His original wife died of dementia, and he ended up marrying another woman that was a little bit younger than him, well, quite a bit younger. But they ended up having a baby, and his lease on life just changed tremendously. Like I got this little baby, I had this little boy to be healthy for, right? To be around for. It gave him a new will to live. Right. So even though I believe now he's in his late 70s, he is living life to the fullest. Right. And that's what kids can do for you. I think kids are such an amazing blessing. And for far too long, we've been told by they out there that, oh, think about yourself. You don't need kids. You don't need a man. You don't need a woman. You just need to do you. Whatever feels good for you, do it. And kids are some kind of anchor, and a marriage is some kind of anchor. Just all this stuff that completely goes against God's perfect divine plan for each of us. Right. And I can tell you that the satisfaction I've had throughout my life with almost 30 years now of experience, it's such at a different level. And so even though for a lot of years my wife worked at home, there were still things that she still wanted to do to contribute. But we always figured out, okay, if you want to make money from home, or if you want to contribute to the household, how can we do this and still allow you to be home, to be present, especially when our boys were little? right? And so we figured it out. There's always a way. If there's one thing to take away from this, it's you have a I can mentality, not I can't mentality. And what I mean by that is our subconscious brain is it's literal and obedient. Whatever you feed it, it'll say it. So if you ever say, "Oh, I can't afford that," your subconscious brain says you're right. You can't afford it and just shuts off. There's nothing for it to solve. Now, if you say, "How can I afford it?" Oh, now you gave your subconscious a problem to solve. And it's constantly working and looking for a way to solve that problem. Have you ever been thinking about how you can do something and all of a sudden you wake up in the middle of the night with this divine inspiration of like, oh, that's it, right? That's that subconscious brain that's constantly working to figure something out, right? And that's the mentality my wife and I have had over our years. It's not that we've had, we've had everything from being really broke to living a life of abundance. But all the time it was like, how can I? How can we do this? How can we achieve this? It's not we can't do it. It's how can we do it? And then all of a sudden these doors open up, right? These windows in your life will open up. But having that partner that you're there with, no matter what you're going through, because there are times in life where I've needed her, she's needed me, I needed her to lift me up, and she needed me to lift her up. Right. And but being in alignment with our goals, with our dreams, with our finances. Like I'll never understand why married people have multiple bank accounts. I figured when we got married, we were one. All the resources are ours. Right. It goes into one because now we're in one sync, we're in one accord, we're in one alignment with our financial goals, with our health goals, with our parenting goals. And it's such an amazing way to live. It's such an amazing way that adds years to your life, and not only years to your life, but again, the quality of those years. Like I said, one of the purposes of this podcast is I want people to get the most life out of every year, right? The absolute most life out of every year, right? And so you get to these points where it's like, how can I do that? And marriage is a major piece of that. I truly believe the blessing of marriage is such an amazing piece of living a long, healthy, fulfilled life. And so when you really think about it, it talks about how most of the time having a marriage, right, being married, it increases your finances over time. It's amazing on how not only can it really help with the finances, because I believe again when you have two minds working toward the same goal, you really have this opportunity, right, to create more. So there are times when I was working out of the house or I'm working on one of our other businesses and my wife was spending time learning investments, right? Learning about the stock market, learning about crypto, things like that. So she was able to help create wealth on those aspects while I was building our other businesses. And especially with our networking business, going out, building our teams, training the leadership up and doing things like that. So we all have strengths and weaknesses. And when you can combine that where you leverage each other's strengths. There are so much stuff she can do on the investment side that I don't know a lot about, and vice versa. Right. And so we get to these points to where when you're leveraging each other's strengths, that's how you can increase your wealth because you're on the same goals with it. Again, being in alignment, the Bible says, hey, we're two or more in agreement. There's no such thing as impossible. I truly believe that because, again, when you're in alignment with somebody on that level and you're wanting to create wealth, you're wanting to create significance, you're wanting to create something that lasts beyond you that you can will down to your kids, right? There's so many other aspects that being alone and trying to achieve the same things is so much harder. It is so much harder, but let's not only get into that, but I wanted to talk about a couple key points that really get into it because ultimately, marriage it correlates with a longer life, especially for men. So I'm talking to the men right now because marriage it's a distinct path. If you want to live a longer life, married men live longer. It's just what it is, especially from fewer deaths from cardiovascular disease, all causes. And so if you think about how being unmarried or never married, divorced, widow, it correlates with higher mortality risks, higher cardiovascular and cancer deaths. Marriage also correlates with a greater financial net worth and stability, like I was saying. So more household income. higher self-reported life satisfaction. The quality of your marriage and the support that it brings, like I said, simply by being married is not automatically protective if the relationship is higher stress or unsupportive. So again, being on the same page, being in the same accord with your spouse, communication. Communication is such a major piece of this because again, too many people spend way too much time on their phones, or all they do is get home, they turn on the TV and they never talk. They never get on that same accord. And that's what I was just talking about. Sometimes the relationship can feel unsupportive if you're not on the same page with your spouse. So think about this: mechanisms that are shared, resources, social support, healthier behaviors, monitoring your health, emotional stability, the economies of scale, the tax benefits and advantage. So you got to think about how these things are. And if you think about one correlation, healthier people are more likely to stay married if their selection basis is it just yields better benefits all around. Bad marriages can be detrimental. I don't think anything can't be fixed, but I definitely understand there's circumstances where you need to get out, and maybe you need to find that person, find your person, right? But good marriages yield higher benefits. It's just what it is. And so when you really think about how marriage can add to your longevity, how it can add to your life, how it can add to so many years, when you really think about how different things are, I had some bullet points that I really wanted to share with that. So um, at the end of the day, kind of bookend this, marriage is correlated with longer, healthier lives, especially for men, right? Especially for men. Unmarried or divorced or unwidowed individuals, they do face higher mortality risk. Married households generally build more wealth and they experience greater financial security. Marriage, the quality matters, right? I mean, we all have seen toxic relationships and toxic marriages, right? So the quality of that relationship matters. And I truly believe I was a guy, I came to Christ because I realized, as my wife gave her life to Christ 2 years before me, that she loved God more than me. And as being a prideful man, I wanted to be number one in her life, right? That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be number one. And that pride broke me to a point where I surrendered. There's a great power in surrendering your life to Christ. There's a great freedom to it. And when I did that, I remember praying one time and thanking God that my wife loves him more than she loves me. Why? Because I am human. I am man and I am fallible. Like I screw up all the time. There are times where, I say the wrong thing in the wrong tone and upset her or whatever that might be. Man, and we get to these points where it's like, holy crap, like what did I just do? But knowing that God, if you think about that triangle, that God's at the top of that triangle and we're down here, and we have that bond and that covenant not only with our creator but also with ourselves. And so for us, divorce was never brought up. No matter in the good times, the bad times, the ups, the downs, the wealth, the poor, whatever life throw at us, we've lived it all. But yet that was never an option. We never looked at divorce as being an option because we figured no matter what we're going through, it's temporary. Too many people think, oh, the grass is greener, right? We all see that. The grass is greener on the other side. Not really, because you're still a part of it, right? Right. We get to these points where, sometimes if the person doesn't change, if you're not growing together, right? We all know how that can lead. And that's where you have to find somebody that you're truly aligned with. You have the same type of goals, you have the same kind of drives, you have the same kind of morals, ethics, all those things. I think religion is a big part of that, right? So you can be aligned in a lot of things, right? If two people believe two completely different things, that's going to cause strife and in your marriage. It's going to cause hardships, right? And so trying to figure all that out. So think about it. The mechanisms include emotional support, shared health monitoring, again, reduced stress, combined finances, social stability. That's such a major piece of it, right? To be able to have your person, to always have that person, that constant in your life. I can't express what a blessing it is in so many ways. And I think again in today's society it's so overlooked where again, it's a more individualistic type of society. where people are like, just go after whoever you want, sleep with whoever you want. You don't need to be committed. You don't need to have these firm, relationships, these marriages. That's something to hold on to. And sadly, it's way too easy to get divorced, right? And people bail out way too fast because a little bit of hard times hit and it's like, oh, it's not worth fighting for. What? Why? Like, why? Why do you feel this way? Where did that love lost? Because sometimes with men, especially, I mean, they almost treat their wives like that trophy buck they got on the wall, right? I remember hearing a pastor talk about that one time. He's like, when you're dating your wife, you are pursuing them, right? Just like a hunter pursues that wild game they're going after. And you'll do anything, like you want to impress, you want to dress up to the nines, you want to stay in shape, you want to do all this stuff, and then you bag her, right? Like you get that trophy buck. So you get your wife, then you hang her on the wall and never look at her again. Like, what? You should always be pursuing your spouse. You should always be dating your spouse. You should always be showing them that they are your person. You desire them and them alone. You have no uh, reason to want to look outside of the marriage, nor do you have a desire to. They should feel that security where they know they are the object of your desire, right? And you're giving all of that, well, especially for men, all of that desire, all of that love, all of that lust, everything that God's given us, you've given it right to her and her alone. So she feels safe and secure and knows she has a great relationship. And what does she do in return? Supports you, right? She looks at you, she respects you. Men and women can't be more different. I don't know how we got in this crazy part of this world where people are saying there's no difference between men and women. We are different. There is massive differences. And God did not make a mistake. He knew he knew what he was doing, right? When he created us and the gifts that he's given both men and women, right? To bring to that relationship so that we can be in one accord. We can be synced. We can be one, right? It says when you're married, you become one flesh. You leave your father and mother, you become one flesh. Most people get the order all kind of backwards, right? They're still living at home. They don't really have a job. They're going out sleeping with people, but yet they want these relationships. That's not, you need to get your own house in order first, right? Especially men, you need to get up, get out of your parents' house, get a job, right? Get your own house in order before you think you're going to be going out. Because if you're still living at your parents' house, not having a job, playing video games all day, and think you want to go out and have a meaningful relationship or even go down the road of getting married, like, you're out of your mind. Like, get your own house in order first, right? So that you can be the man that she needs you to be, right? I believe the man should be the protector, the provider, right? We should have our roles. It's not saying that women can't work outside the house. I'm not saying any of that, but we all have roles. There are ways that my wife connects and has parented our boys. That's not my strength. It's not what God put into me. What did God put into me? To raise them as men, right? I'm going to be their dad first, their friend second. I'm going to tell them what they need to hear, not what they want to hear. There are times I've had to make hard decisions and not worry, does my kid like me right now? Because if it's for their benefit. And we all know sometimes that men have a different capacity for that than women, because my wife on an emotional level or a compassionate level is completely different than me. But we all have it, but we're synced together. That's the beauty of marriage and the benefit of it. And so remember, guys, if you want a longer life, if you want a healthier life, if you want more satisfaction in your life, if you want more wealth, it's not a secret of why married people have those three things. And it can add to the longevity, add to the satisfaction to your life. So at the end of your days, you're not living it with regret. I've seen people that have put off getting married, put off having kids well into their, 30s or even 40s. And then they're like, man, I wish I would have taken the time. I wish I would have had kids when I was able to. Because at some point, especially with women, there's a clock, right? And that sucker's ticking. But we've been taught for so long, it's just been pounded into your brain that you don't need to worry about having kids. You don't need to worry about getting married. Just look out for you and go after and try to what you think is going to be success or significance, and then all of a sudden you're empty. And we've seen that so many times in life. So again, I wanted to do this episode because my whole goal again is to help people live younger longer in all aspects of their life. And I believe marriage is such a key aspect to living a younger life longer, to getting the most life out of your years. The thing that in our season of life right now, because all our boys are grown, it excites me the new experiences my wife and I are going to be able to do together, the trips we're going to be able to go on, all the life experiences, the next stage of our life to where we can build a more healthy, wealthier life. And it's super exciting. Now, when the boys were young, it was super exciting to watch them where everything was wonderment, right? Like the whole world is brand new, and to have that season, and that was a phenomenal season of life, right? But now my job is to continue to grow, right? To continue to help others, to continue to be that voice in their life that keeps them on that straight. For mom, for her, for I said mom and I, but for my wife and I to be that constant in their life to where they can always go to. And that was one of the biggest blessings that I had through my life until my parents died. I always had those people that I could go to, right? Because they were that constant. They were that example of what a good marriage was, what a husband was, what a wife was. And so I knew what I was looking for in my spouse because I had that example of that from my mom. Now maybe you didn't grow up like that. Maybe you had a kind of a horrible household. Well, guess what? You just learned what you didn't want, right? And that's okay because life is always happening for you. It's not happening to you. If you can realize there's always a lesson, there's always something in life that is teaching you and life is happening for you. It's not to you. But in today's world, sadly, we've been shown that being the victim is somehow being rewarded, and you should be the victim in life. No, 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 no. Well, look what life's happening to me. Look at all these things happening to me. Poor me. You'll feel sorry for me. Lift me up. Bull crap. Life is happening for you. Period. And stop. And if you could get that in your head that life is always happening for you and that you are going to take 100% responsibility. I take in 100% responsibility for my business, for my marriage, for my parenting, for everything. It's on me, right? Owning it and knowing everything that we've been through in our life, that life is happening for us. There's such a huge correlation with that, and knowing that going through something that you might be going through hell right now, but there's something in that that's going to strengthen you for something you may have to go through later. And I saw that with dealing with my mother-in-law for a lot of years. She was either really bad alcoholic or on pain pills. And so it was a really hard situation that my wife and I were going through, but I had to handle a lot because I could emotionally disconnect from the emotional part of it because it wasn't my mom. I could disconnect those emotions and just handle the situation. Fast forward to when my oldest son had experimented with some drug that whacked him out of his brain and we had to go to the hospital with him. I was able to handle the situation with a almost God-given calmness. That's the only way I can describe it. And just handle the situation because I dealt with it so on. I didn't realize that hell we were going through with my mother-in-law for all those years was preparing me for a time to where I needed to be that pillar for my son when he was going through some stuff, right? And it was an amazing blessing to be able to keep a calm head, to be able to handle the situation. And thankfully that was a one and done deal and he's fine. He's great, right? Everything's good now. He's not having any of those issues, but man, I could have never thought during all those hard years that it was preparing me for it. Life was happening for me, right? There's no surprises when it comes to God, right? He knows. He knows every hair on your head. He knows every fingerprint. Every one of you has a unique fingerprint. There's not one other person on this earth with your fingerprints, right? You are a unique and wonderful manifestation of God, right? And you have gifts in you that you are put on this earth to find that other person that you can then share your both unique gifts together and create an amazing life and hopefully procreate, right? And make other little humans that are of benefit to the society, right? That want to make this world a better place. Right. I believe we live in the most amazing time. I believe we live in the most amazing country in the world. And man, like there's no limits. There's no stopping you. So what are you really wanting to do? And again, if you're at this point where you're contemplating some of these relationships or you're contemplating your life, I really want you to look at, or maybe you're contemplating your marriage right now. Right? I don't think honestly there's nothing that can't be unfixed. Now, if you're in an abusive relationship, something like that, get out. Right? Like get out. But I've had friends that have been had infidelity and they gotten through it. And now their life is thriving because they chose to get through it. Right? They chose the fact that their marriage was worth fighting for. Right? Because every people mess up. It is what it is. But knowing you always have that person, that constant in your life, that have that love, that support, it's an amazing experience to go through this life with. And that's why I want to do this episode for. So again, kind of recap, guys, as we end it, marriage is always correlated with longer, healthier lives. The prospect of you getting more wealth throughout your life, more satisfaction throughout your life, so you're not ending your days feeling there's no significance, right? That you didn't leave nothing that goes beyond you. I think that's what's so beautiful about marriage and having kids. It goes beyond you. Everything that you sow into them can go beyond you. Right? It's amazing. So, with that, guys, take care. God bless. We'll see you next week. Bye bye.